Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary with a knife video for you. Today I've got a comparison, and it is going to be a comparison for the ages. We have on one hand the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, one of the best all-around EDC folders that you can get your hands on. Highly flexible, much loved. Like, people, myself included, love this knife because it's a great knife. On the other hand, we have the ColdSteel American Lawman. Now, this is the updated American Lawman from 2015. In the previous generation American Lawman with the Aussate steel, I don't think this would be a good comparison. I would just be like, yeah, the Para 2 is way better. Okay, done. Now, in this case, I think we're very close. Okay, and really, I've got to say, if you're not going to watch the whole video, you cannot go wrong with either one of these. These are both phenomenal blades. All right, so very comparable because of size and weight, very comparable in price. Maybe not as comparable. This guy is going to run you $90 to $100. Now this guy is going to be more like $120 to $140. Okay, so there's a significant discrepancy there in terms of price. The other thing that I want to say about comparison is the size of the blade on these, and the philosophy of use on these is very similar as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We always go through size and weight first, and so let's go ahead and give you the size and weight on the Para 2, even though probably a lot of you know it right off the top of your head. All right, so this knife is 8 1/4 inches overall, 3 1/2 inch blade, 3 1/4 inch cutting edge, and 4 3/4 inch handle, and it weighs in at a very impressive 3.8 ounces. So under 4 ounces for a knife of this size is very good. Okay, now on the other hand, we have the American Lawman. This is 8 1/8 inches overall, so it's just a little bit shorter. The blade is where that comes from. The blade is 3 3/8 inches instead of 3 1/4. So I mean, instead of 3 1/2. So 3 3/8 inch blade and 4 3/4 inch handle. And you can see that if I put these side by side, I've got to twist them so the pocket clips don't get in the way. But if I put these side by side, they are literally the same length. Okay. Now, obviously, the Para 2 is thicker, but it's also lighter. So in terms of how these compare as a carry knife, I think they're pretty well tied. Okay, you're going to love carrying either one of these. It's super lightweight, easy to carry. You could carry this all the time and never even notice that you have it with you. Okay, so in terms of size and weight, I think these are actually too close to declare one a winner. Both are very good. Okay, is all I can say about that. Now, moving down to the blade, I don't think that's the case. I think I will say I prefer one blade over the other. Para 2 is a full flat ground blade, 3 1/4 inch cutting edge, clip point, DLC coated. It does have this pretty much all belly blade, very sharp, very fine point on it. And again, really good blade for all kinds of things. Full flat grind is fairly versatile and moderately. Now, in this case, it's not a super strong blade. Okay, this is not a blade that's designed for any kind of side-to-side stresses in any way. On the other hand, we have the DLC coated CTS XHP blade in the American Lawman. It's a drop point with a hollow grind. Okay, so very different blades, even though they're about the same size. And here's where that difference comes into play. Okay, the hollow grind means that this knife slices extremely well. Now, this is a great slicer, but I can tell you, side by side, if you put these through, especially something sticky, if you had a block of cheese and you just went like this, you're going to find the American Lawman moves through that material much more easily than the Para 2. I know because I've done it. Okay, and so you're getting a blade that slices better, but if we turn them this way, guess what? It also carries more steel closer to the tip, making it stronger. So the blade, in my opinion, on the American Lawman is superior to the blade on the Paramilitary 2. And you guys know I do have a bias for hollow grinds, and I'm explaining to you right now why that bias exists. They tend to slice better and have more strength in carried toward the tip. So you're getting a stronger, slicier blade. And to me, those are things that you want. Okay, the steel CTS XHP, I would say, is a better steel than S30V, although it's so stinking close that it really doesn't matter. What we really can't say is that one of these steels is so much better that we say that one is now going to be like the winner here. So because the steels are very close, because those blade shapes and the grinds are the way they are, I've got to give the blade to the American Lawman. Very, very well done on the blade with this knife. So that's the blade. What about the lock and deployment? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there is a significant difference between a compression lock and a triad lock. Everyone knows the compression lock in the Para 2 is very good. It's fast, it's easy to actuate. If you're like me and you like to flip your knife, it's extremely addictive to just sit there and do this for hours on end. It is certainly strong enough. Now, you know, it's not, and no one has ever tried to claim that this is the strongest blade that ever, the strongest lock that ever existed, but it is a very good lock. By the way, both of these are washers, no ball bearings in either one, and I think that's kind of good. On the American Lawman, the deployment is not quite as snappy as the Para 2, okay? Let me try from time to time. Yeah, you're seeing that I'm not able to flip this blade out. Now it'll probably get easier over time, but it's pretty tight. If you push this lock bar, it's tight, okay? And because of that, you get a lot of pressure. So the lock bar, as I move this, see the lock bar is pushing pretty hard on the back of that blade, which is going to tie it up. It can't do anything but, you know, create friction and make that not quite as fast. However, there is this side of the coin, and that is the triad lock is going to be far stronger. And that's going to be true of almost any lock that you compare to the triad lock. So there's a bit of a dilemma here, okay? Do you prefer the lock that's a little faster and maybe a little smoother, or do you prefer the lock that's a little stronger and, or maybe a lot stronger and more reliable? Okay, tough question, guys. And I really, you know, I would say for the average user, and kind of for myself, I'm going to go with the stronger lock. Okay, again, do not trust a folding knife lock. Just don't. Okay, you should never be doing this kind of thing. Okay, I'm not actually pushing hard, which is why it's no big deal. But you should never be doing this kind of thing and putting negative pressure on your knife blade, because one of these times it is going to close on your fingers if you do that regularly, okay? So don't do that with any folding knife, but the triad lock is stronger, and to me, that's important, okay? And by the way, there is some satisfaction that comes from that snap. When this thing locks into place, you feel it and you feel confident, okay? So the lock, I'm got to give the edge to the American Lawman. Now, what about the handle? Now, and again, remember, before we move on to from this point, I am aware that the Para 2 is faster and smoother, okay? I'm aware of that. So, moving to the handle. Now, these handles are the same length, okay? Very comfortable both. Both of them have this finger choil that allows you to choke up on the blade, all right? But the one thing that the American Lawman does different, now the American Lawman is thinner, it's pretty well just as comfortable. Both of these are very comfortable in hand. The American Lawman, though, when you choke up on it, you can get your thumb up here on the blade and do some fine kind of work, okay? And for certain situations, I find that really, really useful. Now, don't hate me too much, guys, but because of that, I'm actually going to give ergonomics to the American Lawman. It's a little thinner, but that option is really helpful to me. This option is still good, but it's not as detail oriented. It's not as precise as this is. So, handle. Both very strong. This one, of course, has stainless steel liners nested. This one has only G10. That said, they're both going to be very, very strong. They are both very, very comfortable and very grippy. Okay, so either one of these, you're not going to go wrong. All right, lanyard hole, both are more than sufficient for 550 cord, so no issue there. There's really, you know, in various grips, they're fairly comparable. The Para 2 is probably a little more versatile. Okay, so if you're always making this kind of a cut or this kind of a cut where you're doing a draw cut towards you, yeah, I would say then you may want to look at the Para 2, but that is a legitimate point. But in terms of just overall usefulness for me and utility for me, I've got to say the American Lawman gives me that ability to get right up on the blade and do some very fine work, and I really, really like that. So because of that, I've got to give the edge even on the handle to the American Lawman. So I will say this is a comparison between good and great, okay, or great and great, really. Either one of these is going to serve you really, really well. But having gone through this, I think it's become fairly obvious that the American Lawman in the 2015 updated version is very comparable in terms of material, in terms of functionality, in terms of toughness and reliability, versatility, durability, all of those categories that we really care about, cutting power. The ColdSteel American Lawman really does compete and even beat the Para 2 in a lot of those areas. All right. Now, guys, I know there's a lot of Spyderco fans out there, and I am a Spyderco fan too. I love my Para 2. I still carry it all the time. It's not like I'm like, now I've got this, just throw this thing away. Not at all. I really like both of these knives, but I will say in terms of an overall knife, if someone said, hey, maybe they weren't a knife person, okay, or maybe they're getting into knives, just newly getting into knives, I'm going to recommend the updated American Lawman for a lot of people. Now, let me say this. There's another discussion that we have to have coming up. That's pertaining to this knife versus the Ultimate Hunter. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, okay? So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun for me to do, and you know, this one's especially more fun because I really, really like these two knives. There's a strong attachment. These will never leave my collection. So because I really like them, it's fun to just talk about knives that you really like. All right, so there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your comments below, and we'll talk to you soon.